Good evening, everyone. My name is Lesley Wu. I came to the United States in 2012 from China. My first job was working at a sushi restaurant, then at the supermarket, earning $8 per hour. Last year, I took the English maintaining class at Best Court Hotel Training Center. I learned English, housekeeping, customer service, and how to do a resume and a job interview. I was hired before I even graduated. And now I work at 2 Union hotels, Courtyard Marriott and Coakley Square, earning $18.51 an hour, plus benefits. I'm still studying. I'm still studying English, but I feel confident. I want to become a citizen. I want to buy a house and a car. And I want to send my daughter to college next year. When you are governor, how will you make sure that immigrants like me can have access to English classes and training? Thank you.
2 years in America, that's fantastic. We start with the question with Don Berwick.
That's how we built our country, isn't it? Congratulations to you. That's wonderful. You know, everything we're talking about connects to human rights and equity and justice in our society, the mainstay of the reason I want to be governor. The way we deal with the immigrant community is a test of our moral fabric. These are people who are among us, they help build our nation, and they're not getting a fair shake all the time. I must say that the Secure Communities Act should be called the Insecure Communities Act, and I fully support the Trust Act, supported by my colleague Jamie Eldridge. And for the record, in-state tuition, driver's license for the undocumented among us, absolutely yes. And let's fight like we have to fight like the Dickens against the misclassification of workers. It is really, it's ugly. With respect to positive agendas, we need to help people get into the mainstream, and that is largely a matter of language acquisition. There are 20,000 people on the waiting list to get into state-funded adult basic education and ESOL programs. We've got to end that. I want to close that gap, make it zero. And we need to make sure there is capital available for young entrepreneurs and early investors in the immigrant community to get started. After all, as I said, 61% of the new businesses in Massachusetts have been started by immigrants.
My father immigrated to this country from Venezuela. I speak Spanish, and I've had the great opportunity in the course of this, well, not just in this campaign, but in my prior time as a business person, to work with organizations in the Latin community in Massachusetts. One of them is the CDC, Community Development Corporation, called Interaz, that works with businesses with what they would call technical assistance. I just would call it help and networking and connecting and helping them understand to build their businesses. I was working with a group up in Lawrence. It's a really inspiring kind of experience to be able to connect on that level. The state has an obligation to do more. There is, as Don points out, that waiting list. It would have cost another $10 million to make sure that that waiting list was dealt with, raising the funding from $30 to $40 million. It was level funded. If this is becoming a familiar story, it's because it's the reality of what's been going on in our government. There's nice words about these things, but the action in our legislature doesn't match it. And I will say that in the political process today, the way that immigrants are being treated is appalling. It's appalling. There's a candidate for governor who's not here tonight who has been on TV making political hay, or trying to, out of the horrendous situation in Central America with these child migrants. And I think it's wrong, and it doesn't belong in sensible, notable political discourse.
My record as district attorney and as attorney general is making sure that for those who are new to our country, that they would feel safe and be safe as mothers, as for their children, as victims of domestic violence, or as defendants, that they are treated fairly, regardless of language ability or status or country of origin. And as attorney general, we have a terrific record of making sure that we hold companies accountable for those who would cheat by undercutting, exploiting workers, not paying them, and we have always gone after, despite whatever the status of the workers were, to make sure they were paying a fair wage for a fair day's work. you know, there are a couple of things that you've mentioned you've taken advantage of. I met a young man who was working out at Logan Airport in a minimum wage job, but taking English lessons. And he ended up having to quit his English lessons, and he did it because he thought he could get a better job if his English were better. He had to quit because he needed 2 full-time minimum wage jobs just to pay his rent. That's wrong, and the state has to be a good partner to our cities and towns in providing economic, educational, language opportunities to make sure that everybody who wants to get a job, who wants their kids to be in school, can have that opportunity to do that here in this country.
Steve Grossman.
You know, Martha, I hear the words. My father used to say, words are words, and promises are promises, but only performance is reality. Which is why I still don't understand, Martha, why you were such a strong supporter of secure communities when it's clearly wrong. More than 50% of the people who have been deported had no criminal record whatsoever. It tears families apart. You finally came over the line and support in-state tuition. You don't support driver's licenses for immigrants. So to say that you support immigrants when you've taken positions that are hostile to the interests of immigrants, when over 1 million people live in Massachusetts are frankly immigrants, to me just doesn't make any sense. On a more positive note, I would just note that it's absolutely critical that we challenge the business community, and the business community gets this. If you take a look at the Mass Competitive Partnership, Suffolk Construction, Mass Mutual, and other companies, they understand that investing in young people, particularly immigrants, in terms of language training is critical. And finally, I fully support Governor Patrick's proposal for the Global Entrepreneurship and Residence Program, keeping people here in Massachusetts to be entrepreneurs, to grow companies, and to create jobs. That's a great idea. We should build on that.
I think we've had our first official sparks. I feel like I just want to give the Attorney General 30 seconds to respond. Sure. And if we have more sparks, we'll have more time for response.
Yeah, well, Steve, I'm not sure what the first part of your statement meant, because you say that a lot, and I'm not sure what it means. But I also want to be clear on my...
You know exactly what it means, Martha. You were a champion of secure communities. It's wrong. You were.
Could I answer, please?
Yeah, but you said you didn't understand. You understand exactly what I said.
No, what I said was I don't understand the preface about the words your father says about words are words and actions action. But let me respond to what Steve has said. Because I have been a champion for people in this country to be safe, to have opportunity to learn English. And when secure communities first came in, it was accepted by first Mayor Menino and Chief Ed Davis. That city said, we want this here because it will make sure that the worst of the worst and the predators, mostly in their own communities, will be removed. That is the secure community that I supported. And I have said, Steve, and you know this clearly, that when it lost its mission, if it did, that I do not support that. I want to make sure that people are safe, and if Mayor Walsh and Mayor Curtatone and their police chiefs don't think it's keeping people safe, then I don't agree with it either. I've had that discussion. I've also said clearly, and I did oppose 5 years ago, more ago, that the driver's license issue, because we had not gotten a federal solution, did not make sense in Massachusetts. I have said this clearly, and Steve knows it. I have an open mind on how Massachusetts can, looking at what other states are doing, what the immigrant community wants, and what those models are, in talking to communities and police chiefs, how we can move forward in Massachusetts to give people access safely for safe driver's licenses, and I will look at that issue. I will keep an open mind. So you can continue to misstate my positions if you want. Thank you.
2 more sentences from Steve Grossman, then Jeff McCormick, who's been waiting very patiently.
2 more sentences?
2 more sentences.
So just using 2 more sentences, I would just note that I fully support driver's licenses for all immigrants. It's a public safety issue. I don't think there's anybody here who would want anybody on the roads of Massachusetts driving without driver's education, driver's training, without insurance. It's wrong. We shouldn't do it.
Jeff McCormick, the world's most patient man. Thoughts about support for English education and job training and support for
is that what that question was? Okay. You know, I tend to hold a mirror up to myself and say, what if I were in this situation? I have traveled all over the world many, many times. And when I go to China, I don't speak Mandarin. When I go to Germany, I don't speak German. I'm pretty skilled. I've created thousands of jobs in a lot of different industries, but if I had a language barrier, I couldn't produce the value for those communities that I could in the United States. So flipping that around, I think, how many amazing, talented immigrants are there who could be tremendous contributors to our society if they had appropriate language training. So to me, that one is a no-brainer, because what made this country great was hard work and hardworking immigrants.